What's going on is we're doing a journey of talks of the Rebbe on what we're calling the Golus and Geula syllabus. That's what we're calling it. Exile and redemption. And we're taking a merry time. Let's just put it that way. Now, during the course of this merriment, we encountered a variety of things. We spent a considerable time talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. We spent some time talking about the duality of leadership, which is very unique, very unusual, of Moshe and Aaron combined. We talked about Moshe's protesting Hashem's hesitation in making Yidden suffer, and what Hashem expected of Moshe Rabbeinu. And we talked about Moshe Rabbeinu going to meet the Pharaoh. And we discussed, and we'll come back to it later, Mitzvah Hashem, that he would meet him in the palace, by the river, and we're not sure where. Each three makkos has a pattern. The first time he tells him, meet him in the palace. The second time he tells him, meet him in the river. And the third time he doesn't even tell him, meet him, just brings the makkah. This repeats itself 3 times. As we discussed before, we're going to come back to it. But before the 10 plagues begin, there was a situation with the Tanin, what we call the dragon. Remember? Last week's class and the class before last, we managed to stretch out a sikh into 2 weeks, was underscoring the idea that there was one miracle which preceded the 10 plagues. This miracle was Hashem telling Moshe to tell Aaron to throw a stick on the ground. That's all he told him. So Aaron throws a stick on the ground. What happens? The stick becomes a snake. The snake becomes a stick again and swallows up the sticks of the Egyptians. And of course the Rebbe wondered, why doesn't Hashem tell all this to Moshe? That the stick will become a snake, the snake will become a stick and swallow up. And the answer is because this first miracle was a demonstration. It was a statement. I'm stronger than you. And it was self-explanatory. It was automatically inferred that if Hashem tells Aaron to throw the stick on the ground, where the purpose is to tell the Pharaoh, I'm the boss and you're my subordinate, it will translate into Aaron's stick swallowing up their sticks. No need to explain it. But that was last week. Now we move on to the makkos. We move on to the plagues. Now let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to learn one sikha each makkah. Of all the makkos, the one that doesn't have a sikha is kinim. Is lice. Otherwise, every makkah has a sikha. So we're going to spend each week a sikha. Today's class, however, is another introductory class, but it's different than the ones before. Because the ones before talked about this idea of Yehi L'sanin, that Hashem is telling Moshe and Aaron to demonstrate to Pare that they're in charge and he's their subordinate. Now begins the makkos. What were the makkos about? Breaking Pare. Last week's miracle was about demonstrating who's in charge. This week's miracle and all the 10 makkos were about breaking the Pharaoh. 1 minute. But breaking the Pharaoh doesn't only involve destroying him, because Hashem could have done that in a minute. Breaking the Pharaoh involves educating him and transforming him, which is why you need 10 makkos. But this is what the Rebbe established last week, that the miracle of the stick was not about breaking Pare, it was about informing him. The 10 makkos were about the process of breaking him down. The first is dam, is blood. But before we get to dam itself, we have one more introduction. And this is the concept of Pare hardening his heart. You know that story, Pare hardens his heart. Today's class is about that. And Mitzvah Hashem, next week we'll do dam. So today's class is about the idea of Pare hardening his heart. And it's a philosophical class. The Rebbe is going to offer us a very meaningful insight into this concept of the Pharaoh hardening his heart. So girls, there are some of you that are new. Let me tell you how these classes work. I underline certain words. I read only what I underline. If you follow the underline, you won't get lost. If you start to let your wise wander, you're lost already. Okay? So here we go. Vayomer Hashem HaMoshe. Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Kaved leiv parei. The heart of the Pharaoh is hard. Me'ein l'shalach ha'am. And therefore he will not send the people away. Now girls, look in footnote 1. What does it say in footnote 1? Pasha Seinu Zayin Yudal. Capital Zayin Pasuk Yudal. Correct? Look at the second column, second line. Vayechazak leiv parei. Translate. Hashem hardened Parei's heart. Look in footnote 7. Capital Zayin Pasuk Yud. So it's two psukim, one after the next. The first pasuk says, Hashem hardens the Pharaoh's heart. The next pasuk says, the Pharaoh's heart is hardened. What do you think is going on here? Hashem said, I'm going to harden the heart of the Pharaoh. And the very next pasuk he makes a statement. The heart of the Pharaoh is hard. Now girls, let me tell you the drama. The drama is that, and the Rabbi is so precise in his analysis of Rashi. It's so precise, it's mind-blowing. That there's 10 makkahs. The last 5 makkahs, beginning with the 6th makkah, it says that Hashem hardened the heart of the Pharaoh. Hashem hardened the heart of the Pharaoh. The first 5 makkahs, it says the Pharaoh hardened his own heart. Are you listening to me? Yeah? So what's the conventional understanding? At the first 5 makkahs, Parei was being stubborn. The second 5 makkahs, Parei was done. The Eibishter was hardening his heart. What's the problem? This is the first makkah. It's before the first makkah. And Hashem says, I hardened his heart. And in the very next pasuk it says, the Pharaoh's heart is hard. What's going on here? In other words, when most people learn Chumash, when I learned Chumash until I learned the Sicha, I just accepted at the first 5 makkahs the Parei was mean by himself. The second 5 makkahs, Parei was done. The Eibishter didn't let him go. But the Rebbe is going to show that it's not the way it is. In all 10 makkahs, there's 2 things. Hashem hardening Parei's heart, and that Parei's heart is hard. A whole other insight. To use Hebrew terms, it's not kamas, it's Sichos. It's not quantity, it's quality. In the very beginning, Hashem hardens Parei's heart. And he says to Moshe, Parei's heart is hard. And what the Rebbe is going to teach us is that when it says Parei's heart is hard, it doesn't mean Parei's heart is hard because I hardened it. Parei's heart is hard because it's hard in addition to my hardening. That's the sikh. You start off with a conventional understanding and the Rebbe changes it. And he shows it you clearly in Rashi, clearly. Now we don't have time to do all the Rashis or the nuance. We're just going to get the gist of it. But the Rebbe is going to teach us that the Eibishter tested Parei by making his heart hard. But he says to Moshe, I'm making him stubborn. But believe me, he's much more stubborn than I'm making him, because it's his own stubbornness. So there's 2 dimensions to the Pharaoh's stubbornness. There's the dimension of the Eibishter making him stubborn, and there's the deeper dimension, that Parei is a stubborn mule.
One of the psukim says kabed and the other one says chazek. It's 2 different verbs.
Fine.
So 2 different aspects.
It's not. Okay. Look in the second column. Shetargumei v'iskif kamei is yakir. By us, it's yakir. Same thing. What about? So here we go. We're going to learn a Sikha that's talking about Parei's stubbornness. Remember, the 10 Makkahs came to break Parei. The 10 Makkahs came to break Parei. So the Torah says to us, why does Parei have to be broken? Because he's stubborn. The Rebbe is going to teach us that in Parei's stubbornness there's 2 madregas. Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, "Kaved le'Parei, the heart of the Pharaoh is hard, me'ein l'shalacham," and that's why he's not going to send the people away. Ma'atik Rashi tevas kaved. Rashi quotes the word kaved, u'mefaresh targumeh. The correct translation of the word kaved is from the Targum, yakir. What does yakir mean? Hard. V'loi is yakir, and not it's been made hard. Now, girls, the difference between the words is yakir and yakir simply is past tense or present tense. Is yakir means it's been hard. Yakir means it's currently hard. Philosophically, the difference is whether the hardness is a verb or a noun. Is yakir means someone is making him hard. Yakir means he is the entity of hardness. So it says in Kapitel Zayin, Pasuk Yudalet, Hashem says to Moshe, you should know that the Pharaoh's heart is hard as a noun, not as a verb. He's not doing hardness, he is hardness. In other words, his hardness is now, it's not from a prior moment. Okay? Next column, please. Next column. Why does Rashi need to explain this? Because the one pasuk before it says Vayichazek leipari. Translate. Hashem hardened his heart. Now, if you say Vayichazek leipari, it's past tense. Hashem has already hardened his heart. Continues the Rebbe. There's room to interpret. When it says in the next pasuk, Kaved le'Parei, which means Parei's heart is hard, you would think to translate the word Kaved, it's already hard. Already from when? From the pasuk before, where Hashem says, I'm going to harden his heart. So Targum says, no, Kaved doesn't mean it's hard because I made it hard. Because if Kaved would mean it's hard because Hashem made it hard, it would say, Es Yakir, it's already been hardened. It says Rashi Ketargum Yakir. It's hard right now. What is he saying? That the hard heart of Parei is not only because of what Hashem is doing to Parei, it's because of Parei is. There's 2 hardnesses here. There's a hardness that the Eibishter adds to Parei, and there's Parei's own hardness. And that's how they never read the Sikh. It's so psychological. It's so profound. It's such a revolution in understanding the story. And it's 2 psukim, one after the other in Chumash, with a few words in a Rashi. The Mashenem pasuk le'achar is that when it says in the first pasuk, Hashem hardened his heart, and it says in the pasuk immediately thereafter, Parei's heart is hard, you would think that they're connected. Why is Parei's heart hard? Because Hashem hardened it. Hu gamkin be'esi aderech, it's in the same vein. Kimei vaychazik vaynu is yakir. Pay love, Hashem already did it. Umishum hachi hutzrach Rashi lishlol pirush there. Rashi needs to remove this pirush. Targume yakir. It means that Parei's heart is hard by itself. V'lai is yakir. Now it's been made hard by Hashem. V'atam mipnei shu shem davar k'miki kavod mimcha adam. So, you already have the code to the whole Sikha. What is the code to the Sikha? That when you learn Hashem of hardening the heart of Parei, and you learn that the Parei's heart is hard by itself, and you see it as a contradiction, and you want to relegate it to chronology. In the beginning, Pare's heart was hard by itself, and in the end, Hashem hardened his heart. That's going to leave you with a lot of questions. Says the Rabbi, you got it wrong. It's not earlier he was hard by himself, and later Hashem hardens. Throughout, there's two hardnesses. There's the hardness that Hashem gives him, and his own hardness. And his own hardness is deeper than the hardness that Hashem adds. And the Rebbe argues it by studying the Rashis, which we're not going to do. Page 30, please. Now, girls, for this you need to think. This is subtle, but clear. What is the convention? What is the convention? The convention is that the first 5 Makis, Pare was stubborn without God's help. And the final 5 Makis, Pare was stubborn because of God. Says the Rebbe, you didn't read Rashi carefully. Because if you would read Rashi precisely, you would see that you'd just be making a mistake. Look inside. Va'ni aksha, I will harden. Says Rashi, va'afa b'kein, nevertheless, b'chamesh makes harishones, in the first 5 makes, loy ne'ema. Anybody speak Hebrew? Loy ne'ema. It doesn't say. Not it didn't exist. It doesn't say. Vayechazik Hashem es lech Pare, that Hashem hardened Pare's heart. Ela vayechazek lech Pare, Pare's heart was hardened. So the Rebbe says, what is mishitchi es haloshen? When you read those words in Rashi superficially, what do you take away? Mashma, it's implicit. Shebehei makas harishenes lo yichidek Hashem lech Pare melech Mitzrayim. The first 5 plagues, Pare was stubborn without Hashem's influence. Allahu chizek esatzim, he strengthened himself. And only the last 5 makas, Hashem had to strengthen his heart. Says the Rebbe, look again. Avol kadaik shapir. If you look carefully at Rashi's words, you'll discover that you misread it. Ki bepirish Rashi neman, all Rashi says is rakshe bekosov lei neman. The Torah doesn't tell us. Hashem did not in his heart. Now, girls, why is this significant? Why is this significant? Chava, help me out. Because before the first Makkah, footnote 7 is before the first Makkah. It's like Vayechazek Leipare. So even before the first Makkah, there's a reference to the idea of Hashem hardening his heart. So this supposition that all of us had, that the first 5 Makkahs, Pare's heart was hard by itself, and the last 5 Makkahs, Pare's heart was hardened by God, is a misread in Rashi. If you look carefully, the only thing it says is, it doesn't say in the Pasuk Hashem hardened his heart. But in reality, all 10 Makkahs have both dimensions. What changes the balance? But Pare was stubborn for 2 reasons. Hashem made him stubborn, and he had his own stubbornness. From Dam till Becheres. But in the first 5 Makkahs, it doesn't say so. Because in the first 5 Makkahs, the stubbornness of Pare was more pronounced. In the latter 5 Makkahs, the Hashem's giving him stubbornness is more pronounced. But actually, all 10 Makkahs have 2 stubbornnesses. Girls, this is why the Lubavitcher Rebbe is a genius. In a million years, you wouldn't think of this. And it's right there in front of your nose. Avol kadai kil shapi, beginning of the paragraph. If you examine the words carefully, that's an incorrect interpretation. It doesn't say in Rashi that the first 5 Makkahs, Pare hardened his own heart. In the last 5 Makkahs, Hashem hardened his heart. It says in Rashi that the last 5 Makkahs, the first 5 Makkahs, it doesn't say in the Pasuk, Hashem hardened his heart. In the Pasuk, it doesn't say Hashem hardened his heart. In the words of Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu, Loi Matzinu, it says no place that Hashem is going to tell Moshe that in the first 5 Makkahs Hashem is not going to harden the heart of the Pharaoh. So the Rebbe studies Rashi like no one else in history and comes away with a fascinating idea. There's stubbornness by all 10 makas on both levels. So we continue. Page 31, the underlined. If it's true, as we just said, that from the first of the 10 makas, Hashem is hardening Pari's heart, Sheshama Moshe, that Moshe heard before the first of the 10 makas, Va'ani Akshet slave Pari, I'm going to harden Pari's heart. How can Hashem, in the same breath, in the very next pasuk, say to Moshe, Kaved Leiv Pari, that Pari's heart is hard by itself, and who Tama Einish the Makazdan, that's why he's being punished. If from the first Makkah Hashem is hardening his heart, what's he punishing him for? What's the answer? Kaved Leiv Pari. Pari's heart is hard by itself. Wait a minute. Are you making his heart hard? Or is it hard by itself? What's the teretz? Two things. Bazeh miskavin Rashi lahadgish borur. Rashi is teaching us. Shakavanas HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'kaved leiv Pari. When Hashem says to Moshe, Pari's heart is hard, L'hoidia, he's telling him as follows. She'ein zeh rak mishum yizbarach yirkes levi. He says to Moshe, you should know Pari's stubbornness is not only because of me. I'm pouring kerosene on the fire, but there's plenty of fire. Pari's stubbornness is his own. It's refusal to send the people away. It's not only based on Hashem hardening his heart, he by himself hardened his heart to refuse to let the people go. That's why he's being punished. Bracket. I never read the brackets, but this one we're reading. Girls, there's a Meidin Dikei Rambam. A Meidin Dikei Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva, where the Rambam talks about free will. What does the Rambam say? Why do we get punished? Why do we get rewarded? Because we have free will. No, ask me a question. Hashem told Abraham that his children are going to be enslaved in a nation, and that nation was Mitzrayim. What are you punishing Mitzrayim for? It was predestined. Hashem made them punish the Jewish people, and then he punishes them. What kind of Hashem is he? The Rambam asks this question. What's the Rambam's answer? Nobody asked him to enjoy it. Nobody asked him to be mahader in mitzvahs, to be very precise in the performance of the mitzvah of making the Jews suffer. That they did because they enjoyed it, and that's what they were punished for. So there's two dimensions in all 10 makas. Hashem says, I'm hardening his heart, but I'm not punishing for that. His heart is hard. I'm punishing him for that. Al derech hatirutz b'svarim, like it says in Rambam. Al akusha, on the famous question, Heich henish HaKadosh Baruch Hu HaMitzriyim. How and why does Hashem punish Egypt? Al shehavidu b'nei Yisrael b'farech, for making the Jewish people work like slaves. Hari HaKadosh Baruch Hu gazer aleim. Hashem decreed, va'avodim, they will enslave them. V'inu them, they're going to torture them. What do you want from Mitzrayim? They're doing David's will. What's the answer? The Zesha Mitzrayim Hefidu V'inu as Bnei Yisrael. The Mitzrayim were carrying out Hashem's will, but they were not doing it for Hashem. They enjoyed every minute of it. They were not only doing Hashem's will, they were evil. They got pleasure from hurting other human beings. That's what they were punished for. So what do you have? Did Hashem take away the Egyptians' free will or not? No. Yes and no. The Jews had to suffer in Egypt, but the Mitzrayim had to do it. But the Mitzrayim did not have to do it with joy, willfully, with Hidden Mitzvah. So there's two components. Since the Rebbe Rashi is teaching us that in all 10 makas, you have these two components. For the fact that Hashem their hearts didn't punish them, it's God's fault. But the fact that Pari's heart is hard, that's Pari's fault. And according to this reading, just like during the first 5 makkahs, Hashem is hardening the Pharaoh's heart. In the last 5 makkahs, it's also true that Pare is still stubborn. The Rebbe turns a simple pasuk into a brilliant pasuk. Rashi has to tell us, Kovid Pirush Yakir, hard now, V'loi is Yakir, not hard from before. It's a noun and not a verb. This makes it absolutely clear Sha'akavon, that we're dealing with Keved Leiv Shel Pare, the hardened heart of the Pharaoh, Mitzad Atzmei, not from God. You get it? Brilliant, brilliant. So in all 10 makkahs, from the beginning, Hashem is making Pare's heart hard. But the Rebbe is saying that you should know Kaved. If he was doing this just because of me, I couldn't punish him. But he's a stubborn person. And that stubbornness is yakir, it's his own, it's not mine. And it prevailed during all 10 makkahs. That's when I'm punishing him. And the Rebbe explains in Api Chasidus. Look at the bottom of the page. Kvedas halev bepashtus inyona ikshas halev. A hard heart means a stubbornness. Sheini mispal mishum David doesn't care about anything. V'gam kishesichle meidale, when your brain says shetzadach leisnag be'evan hafchi, you should behave differently. V'gam hergish shebelibe neita tzadached, the feeling in his heart tells you otherwise. Harayom esakid, you get stubborn. Shalei l'shayas and agosi, you don't change your behavior. V'zehu inyana shel klipas pare. This is the klipa of pare. Pare eizes ha'erev ha'mayra l'kshek she'erev. Girls, you want a modern day example? Hitler and the Nazis. You know the story of World War II. If you want to know the story of World War II, you have to remember one word. Stalingrad. Now, what does Stalingrad or World War II? That's where the tide of the war turned. Hitler was winning miraculously. Really. Hitler conquered 3 or 4 countries without firing a shot. And of course, the story of Stalingrad was that he had a general who he made into a field marshal, whose name was Pallas, I believe, something like that, who wanted to retreat and save his army. And Hitler didn't let him. And tens of thousands of soldiers perished. And that was the beginning of the end for the Nazis. What happened in Hitler's mind after Stalingrad? This is historical fact. Hitler said, this war has 2 purposes. To create Lebensraum for the Germans and to annihilate European Jewry. So I'll continue killing Jews. What about Lebensraum for the Germans? Since the Germans did not have what it took to be my followers and to win the war for me, I'm going to destroy Germany. Girls, what I just told you is a historic fact. Hitler knew the war was lost in 42, at the beginning of 43, pardon. And his people fought with him for 2 more years. And he said explicitly that if we don't win, Germany's finished. And all the people around him, all they had to do, as they say in the mafia, was give him 6 ounces of lead. They could have done it in March 45. They could have done it in February. They could have done it in January. They could have done it in December 44. Why didn't they do it? Kaved Leiv Pare. Hitler's stubbornness took over Germany. It was totally irrational. If you know the story of the final solution to the Jewish question, Hitler was thinking about moving the Jews out of Europe. When the war turned, when he saw that he's losing, it was the Jews' fault that he's losing. That's when he started to kill Jews in earnest, in the millions. And as he was killing Jews, he was destroying Germany. And he said it over and over and over again to the German people. Rise up, you idiots! We're talking about more than 2 years of war. This is February 43. The war finishes in April 45, May 45. What's the teretz? Kaved Leiv Pare. You don't need God's help for that. Verstehst? So the Rebbe said that's exactly what happens in Mitzrayim. Hashem is making Pari stubborn. But the stubbornness of the Pharaoh himself exceeds it. Here's the key point. It must be broken. Pari's innate stubbornness must be broken. What Hitler stands for must be broken. So Hitler stays alive. The stupid German people go along with him until his stubbornness is broken. And the breaking of that stubbornness is for posterity, it's forever. It's finished. That philosophy is gone, it'll never come back again. If I had an hour, I could lecture you on what the Germans represented. I don't have an hour, but it's exactly the same story. The Rebbe says, if you look in Rashi, there's two things going on. There's rational stubbornness that Hashem is giving him. There's irrational stubbornness. That's his own. What's a German? If I can't create the 1,000-year Reich, I'm dead. How stupid is that? There's a lot of things in between dead and the 1,000-year Reich. In Hitler's mind, there was no room for that. And in 60 million German minds, they went along with it. That's Koved Lev Pare. This is not the Eibishter. The Eibishter's stubbornness that he gave Pare was reasonable. When it becomes unreasonable, it's enough. So that there it says Koved. The stubbornness of Pare makes no sense. And I have to break it before the Yidden get out. Because the 10 Makkis was not just about getting Yidden out, it was about breaking Pare. Turn the page. Ha'ikshus gufa, stubbornness itself. Yechoil aliyas v'shnei efanim. There's two concepts of stubbornness. Page 32. Aleph. Ha'anhoga be'v'shelikshus. Behaviorally stubborn. Ikshus bepeil. Practically stubborn. Isakal shepeil. You break yourself a commitment, you send yourself a course, and you don't back away. You make yourself stubborn. Base. Hanhoga zu chederes b'chol mitzvah. You say the stubbornness pervades your whole form. You become stubborn to your core. What's stubborn to your core? Hitler really believed that when he poisoned himself and then shot himself, no more Germany, no more Germany, no more Germans. Finished. He was God. If God is dead, the nation is dead. Literally. What's ironic is, he told it to people over and over and over again. They all understood how ridiculous it was. Why did they shoot him? Why did they kill him? Because it became a Matthias. It became an entity. The stubbornness of Hitler became the stubbornness of the Germans. It makes no sense. And it had to be broken. V'zeu she'matech shle'yakir kloimer. Ein ze rak inyan shel hanhoga shel iknus. It's not an acting stubborn. The idea that in every person's neshama, very deep, there's a stubbornness who emerged in the Pharaoh, emerged in Hitler. Consequently, kol inyan etzlei hu ba'efen shalikshus. Everything by him was stubbornness. That's how it was by Pare. He didn't have to force himself to be stubborn, to be stubborn. He was an essence of stubbornness.
So if the point of the Makkos and the hardening, Paris hardening, was that this klipa should be broken, then how did it resurface with Maximo?
It's a different klipa.
Okay.
It's not the same klipa.
Okay.
We can talk about it. Hitler, I don't want to get into this now, but
No.
I wrote a very good class once years ago, but I didn't put it online, whatever, didn't deliver it very well. In a few minutes, few sentences. If you want to understand the Jew, study our greatest enemies. Who are our greatest enemies? Stalin and Hitler. Why did Hitler hate us? Because we were soft. Because we had mercy. Because we had compassion. Because we represented goodness. Hitler wanted to eradicate softness. Hitler's philosophy of life is, you have a broken leg, I'm taking your shoes. You're going to resist, I'll kill you. Why? Evolution, survival of the fittest. You're now unfit to live. It was a simple philosophy. Hitler was evolution in its purest form. Why did Stalin hate the Jews? Because they were revolutionaries. Because they were stubborn. Because they wouldn't bend. Now girls, what's a Jew? Stalin's version or Hitler's version? They're opposites. It's the combination. That's a Jew. Isn't that amazing? If you can combine Jewish softness with Jewish hard-neckedness, you understand the Jew. Nobody in the world is like that. Other. So Stalin hated us for one reason, Hitler hated us for the opposite reason. You combine the two, you understand what a Jew is. Hitler wanted a world that was tough. Hard. Tough, hard. And perfect. No emotion. No weakness. What do the Jewish people represent? Softness, compassion, kindness. When a person is sick, you take care of him. You don't euthanize him. When a person is hungry, you feed him. You don't make him starve. He hated that. He hated that. The Jews represented what he thought was subhuman. When in reality it's God. When he was killing the Jews, he was killing God. And he knew it. And he said so. You with me? Pharoah was a different klipa. A different one. Go ahead. Are we talking about Hitler now? Are we talking about Hitler or the Sicha?
No, the Sicha.
Okay, go ahead.
If Pharoah was already stubborn, then why did Hashem have to go make him stubborn?
Because there's two dimensions to his stubbornness. There's the reasonable dimension, I could win dimension, and there's the absolute dimension. Hashem gives no reasonable dimension. Why? It's his job to keep the Jews in Egypt. But he's punishing him. Pharoah is supposed to enslave the Jews. That's his job. It's his mission. But he's not punishing for that. He's punishing for that because Pharoah brought out of him a self-destructive midah. If I die, Egypt is finished. Which is ridiculous. Says the Rebbe, V'hinei hamakes shehivya kadosh baruch hu al Pharoah, the plagues that the Eibishter brought on the Pharaoh, kavanasa mafnim is hoisa lish beiras klipas Pharoah. Had to break the Pharoah. Aval yadua, it is known shekidei levatel midah ro ki yetze bezeh. When you want to break something bad, and you fight fire with fire. You defeat an evil with its own type. If you want to destroy what Pharoah was, and Pharoah became this stubbornness that came from so deep inside of himself, he couldn't be rational. How are you going to break that? With the stubbornness of Kedusha that is equal to that. The idea that Pharaoh's stubbornness comes from inside of himself, which is opposite the kavod, the hardness of klipa, says the Rebbe Yeshne kavod the kedusha, the hardness of kedusha. You know what that is? Kabbalah sel machashmai, accepting the yoke of kingdom of heaven. And there's two levels. One level is it makes sense. Another level that makes no sense comes from the neshama. Which explains to us, in order for Moshe Rabbeinu, for Moshe to dominate and to break the klip of Pharoah on two levels, rational stubbornness and irrational stubbornness. Moshe has to find himself two stubbornnesses. Explains that there's two levels of Kabbalah Seil. The Kabbalah, read Aleph and Beis, okay? Kabbalah Seil, B'dugma is the Kabbalah Seil Shavet Pashut. The Kabbalah Seil of a slave. What's the Kabbalah Seil of a slave? He doesn't want to do it, but you make him, so he does it anyway. Beis, Kabbalah Seil Shalamaylam Kalkeches Nafshi, a Kabbalah Seil which is higher than your mind altogether. So there's a Kabbalah Seil where I do what David wants, even though I don't want to. And there's a Kabbalah Seil David wants, because I forgot about myself completely. For Moshe to defeat the two hardened hearts of the Pharaoh, Moshe had to find within himself the two levels of Kabbalah Seil. Bottom of the first column, page 33. V'zeu shemefarish Rashi Yaakov v'leis Yaakov. Hashem is saying to Moshe, he wants Moshe to know. If we're going to defeat Pare, you got to know that the hardening of his heart is not from the outside, it's not rational. It's from inside, it's from his essence. Shekidei levatel kveidus de Pare, to break the hardness of the Pharaoh, shudav shame dover, covered be etzem. So the Chlias Yafrik the Kedusha. Hashem is telling Moshe this. Why? Why is Hashem saying to Moshe, you should know that Pare's stubbornness has two dimensions? Because Moshe has to defeat him. And Hashem says to Moshe, understand that the Pare's stubbornness has two dimensions, and you will only defeat him with two dimensions of your own. Tzarechlias Yaakeh the Kedusha. There needs to be an innate and inner stubbornness of Kedusha. V'lai is Yaakeh. And not a stubbornness based on reason. Because Shalema Spika Avedis Hashem Bekabal Sel Bepeil. You won't defeat Pare by being stubborn on the behavior level, which is Ap'ula the Kabbalah Sel, doing Kabbalah Sel, Shula Matam and Kolakeches, which is less than all the faculties. Hashem is telling this to Moshe. Moshe has to understand. If you want to break Pare, you got to go deep in yourself. How deep? Not only stubborn in serving Hashem where it makes sense, stubborn in serving Hashem where stubborn is ashamed of it. You can't help yourself. Totally irrational. Because the stubbornness in Kedusha on that level will defeat the stubbornness in Klippa. Like Mesiras Nefesh. Wonderful sikh. A total transformation of the pasuk.